Okay, I think we'll make a start then. So welcome everyone to the You, Me and the SDGs webinar hosted by the Co-operative College. And I think on behalf of the college, Amanda and I would like to welcome you all into the space and appreciate you all coming today as well. So just to start off, just to make a connection, because we are on a webinar, however, we still have the ability to connect with each other through the chat. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the chat box. If you could just pop something in there really quick, just introduce yourself, say how you are and whereabouts you're from, that would be brilliant. How are you today, Amanda?
I'm very well, thank you. And I'm looking forward to doing this webinar with you, Stacey, as ever. I always enjoy working with my lovely colleague. And it's great to be talking about the SDGs as well, because we need to keep them firmly on the agenda.
Absolutely.
While people are filling in the chat box, shall we start to share the slides?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just seeing people pop a message in the chat. If I miss you out, I'm not being rude, but they're going up really fast. So, and now they've gone. So I'll just say welcome to everybody and hello, and we're really looking forward to today.
Welcome into the session. So now Stacey is going to talk us through what we're going to cover today.
Yeah, so we've got 60 minutes today to talk about and explore SDGs. So what we want to achieve within this 1 hour is we're going to introduce the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. And we're just going to take you through an introduction to that. But then we want to examine the relationship between cooperatives and the SDGs. Then we're going to move on to something where you can interact with each other and with us through a Mentimeter. So we're going to share the SDG actions that we can all do, but we're going to get you to share yours within the Mentimeter as well. And then to end the 1 hour, we want you to commit to a new action, something realistic and achievable that you can put into place, which meets the priorities of the SDGs.
So just a little introduction to us. My name's Amanda Benson, as you can see on the screen, and I probably will know quite a few people who are on the webinar. I've been at the college for 6 years, so over that time I've met lots and lots of co-operators from all different parts of the world, which is great. Yeah, I'm going to hand over to Stacey to introduce herself.
Thank you, Amanda. So I'm Stacey Sol. I'm the adult education tutor here at the college, and I'm really looking forward to the next hour and seeing everyone's ideas and thoughts.
So as this session is kind of designed for people who might know a little bit about the SDGs, but also we wanted to make sure that anyone who didn't know much about the SDGs could also get some background information. So we're just going to do a brief introduction to what are the Sustainable Development Goals. So the Sustainable Development Goals are a universal call to action. So it's about everybody working together to end poverty, to protect the planet, and also to improve lives and, you know, sort of prospects, so work prospects, economic prospects, environmental prospects for everybody everywhere. And the way that they differ from the previous goals, which were the Millennium Development Goals, is that these are very much focused, the Sustainable Development Goals are very much focused on everybody working together, whereas the Millennium Development Goals tended to put more of that kind of emphasis on countries in the global south. This is really about recognizing that this is for everybody on the whole planet to work together. And, you know, they cover a whole range of different topics and areas of economic activity and address a huge intersection of different concerns. And they're all interconnected as well. And that's the really important thing. So by achieving actions against certain goals, you know, you'll also be making actions against other goals as well. So you can't really single out any one of the development goals individually. You're always going to be addressing probably several goals at the same time. So we're just going to launch a poll and ask everybody how many sustainable development goals there are. So I'm going to launch that poll now. Brilliant. So I'm just going to end the poll now and share those results. So can everyone see those?
Yeah.
You can see there that the majority of people who voted selected 17, and that is the correct response. There are in fact 17 development goals. So well done, everybody. I'm going to stop sharing that result now. And so we're going to move on to the next slide, which shows all of the 17 development goals together. Now, sometimes when you think it's a lot, that's a lot of goals to get through. So, you know, I often find that when I think about the goals, I like to divide them sort of almost into different themes. And the college actually has an online course about the co-ops and the sustainable development goals. And when we came to write the content for that course, we realized it was enormous. The amount of content that you needed to cover all 17 goals was absolutely enormous. And so the way in which we divided it was into these different themes. So for example, you've got the SDGs and people. So the majority of those goals are really focused on people and achieving goals for the benefit of individuals and groups of people. Then the second set, SDGs in our world, is very much focused on those kind of more environmentally sustainable goals. I mean, obviously they are all interconnected. So, you know, these divisions are sort of slightly, you know, arbitrary, but it does help, you know, when we're trying to sort of break them down and make them more manageable. And then the final set is SDGs and systems. So that's kind of, you know, about education systems and like infrastructure and communities, you know, and also like working together to achieve the goals as well, and institutions. So, you know, that one is much more about that kind of organizational and more sort of structural type way of thinking about the goals. Stacey's now going to take us through what have the SDGs got to do with co-ops?
Yes, I suppose that's quite a big question, and I suppose that's relevant to what have the SDGs got to do with everybody, because they are everyone's responsibility. But in terms of co-ops, unlike other businesses and organisations, cooperatives are guided by a set of values and principles which are recognised across the world. So here on the screen, you'll see we've got our list of values and in the left-hand side of the box. And then in the different coloured boxes, we've got our guiding principles. So the 7 cooperative principles are grounded in the cooperative values, which we see in the blue box on the left. And these are a reference point for cooperatives across the world. The way in which co-ops are owned, run and driven by their values and principles means that they are closely aligned with the key ideas of sustainable development. So everything that co-ops do, the way they operate, are from a values-based approach, which includes a lot of things that you see come up within the sustainable development goals. So it's very much emphasised as well in the 7th principle, which is the pink one down at the bottom, which is concern for the community. There are a lot of examples of cooperative activities that address a range of sustainable development goals, again, across the globe, all in different ways, but then you've got cooperatives who might do something in very similar ways. Ed Mayo, who is the former secretary of the Secretary General of Cooperatives UK, said that the match between SDGs and cooperative values and principles are close. Further, what cooperatives bring is not just a vision, but the ability to live out that vision in practical commercial reality. And that's absolutely true. If you're familiar with cooperatives, you will know that, you know, that is a golden thread through them as well. Just pop over to the next slide, please, Amanda.
So I'm just going to launch the poll.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
That's okay. So we've got another poll, which is, and this is also a test if you've been listening. So which of the cooperative principles specifically mentions sustainable development in its wording? So I'm just going to launch that poll. Great. I'm going to end that poll and then share the results.
Interesting.
And hopefully everyone can see that on the screen. I might have to scroll down. But yes, we can see there that the majority of people who voted did select concern for community. And that is the correct answer for that.
So just moving on and focusing on the concern for the community, which became a cooperative principle in its own right in 1995. But the values and principles spell out the commitment to sustainable development. So just in the pink circle there, you will see a quote which is taken from Principle 7. So cooperatives work for the sustainable development of their communities through policies approved by their members. And cooperatives have been described in the past as a natural vehicle to achieve the priorities and the strategies within the Sustainable Development Goals. All values and principles closely align with the key ideas of sustainable development. So you will probably see links between every value, every principle, which link directly to those 17 goals. And the way in which co-ops are owned, run and driven by their values and principles means they are closely aligned with the key ideas of sustainable development as emphasised by the 7th cooperative principle, concern for community. So there are examples of cooperative activities that different cooperatives do across the world. Some might be surprising, some might be, you know, I have heard of that. But Amanda is going to take us through some of those examples.
Thank you, Stacey. And what I'd like to say as well at this point is I'm aware that we've probably got lots of different people from different cooperatives on the webinar, and it would be fabulous if you'd like to share some of your own suggestions for these categories as we go through them. Like if you can think of any specific cooperative examples you'd like to share, we'd really love to hear them. So just thinking around cooperatives, SDGs and people. Now, you know, cooperatives, the original foundation of cooperatives was to address some of these issues that we can see on the screen. So for example, zero poverty and zero hunger. So, you know, that was, you know, a group of people in Rochdale who got together because they were fed up with being exploited. They were fed up of having their food adulterated. So they decided to form that cooperative in order to overcome some of these issues, you know, and sort of also promoting, you know, through the activities of co-ops, you know, we've been able to push for like policy change around decent work as well. So, you know, there's lots and lots of ways in which co-ops address many of these different SDGs, both historically and in the present day. And also, you know, we've been able to see that throughout time, cooperatives have been formed at points in history where there have been crises. So, you know, there's no time, you know, like the present, if you think about it, there's no time like the present for having another sort of resurgence of cooperatives. Because if we think about things like in the 1970s, when there were like, you know, really sort of hard economic conditions and a really high rate of unemployment across Europe, that's when we saw a big boom in worker co-ops, for example. So, you know, and in the 1930s, there was a surge in co-ops in the US during the Depression. So, you know, we can kind of map those kind of surges in cooperative growth against times when people were facing similar issues to today, and some of these issues that we see through these SDGs. So through our work at the college, currently have a project in Malawi working with Central England Co-op, and that's to promote kind of higher value crops. So for example, like macadamia and coffee with smallholder farmers, you know, often what you find in countries where there isn't a formal economy, there's lots and lots of informal economy workers who, without being able to join a co-op, would be left kind of, you know, individually trying to kind of make ends meet and very sort of low level subsistence farming. Whereas if these people form into co-ops, then, you know, they can access a whole range of different services and support that they'd never be able to access as individuals. And so that's the way in which co-ops can really help address those things around, you know, getting decent work and having and being able to reduce poverty. And also because of the fact that they are open, you know, voluntary and open organizations, it means that and everyone, you know, one member, one vote. So, you know, they can also help to address issues such as gender equality and reduce other inequalities. And in terms of good health and well-being, you know, many cooperatives use their platform as a way to educate people around being healthy. So, for example, some cooperatives that are working in countries where there's issues with AIDS, for example, they also use those cooperatives as a platform to be able to talk about and educate members on those types of issues as well. You know, many of these, the SDGs are focusing on, you know, more of a focus on environmental sustainability. Now, of course, we can see, you know, from the sort of crazy weather we've been having both in mainland Europe, but also, you know, our kind of very, very sort of cold and dull weather for this time of year in the UK, you know, we can see that they're, you know, climate change in action. So these are the types of goals that are going to be really, really important in the sort of coming years. But already we can see that co-ops are, you know, taking action against these goals. For example, thinking about affordable and clean energy, co-ops give people the opportunity to come together to create their own schemes. So rather than being reliant on, you know, those global fluctuations in energy prices, local communities are able to pool resources and come together to invest in wind power or to invest in solar schemes. And, you know, there's lots and lots of different examples of what's called a RESCOOP, so a renewable energy co-op. But there's lots and lots of different ways in which co-ops are also promoting other types of climate action, and particularly around kind of behavior change in consumers. So, for example, you know, introducing biodegradable plastic bags, you know, thinking really promoting that kind of ethical sourcing and trading, and campaigning for that at kind of policy level and at government level as well. So not just taking those actions in terms of how it sells products, but also trying to make and sort of influence change at a higher level as well. So really kind of promoting that and trying to address many of these goals simultaneously. And then for the final set of examples, you know, thinking about co-ops and systems, you know, just thinking about, for example, in sustainable cities and communities, you know, how cooperative housing, and, you know, we have a real crisis in affordable housing in the UK and probably in many other countries as well. And it's, you know, particularly affecting young people and in cities. So this is really important. And, you know, housing co-ops are a really useful way for people to be able to address their problems with housing. And the great thing about cooperative housing as well is they're not just a place where people live, they're a place where people, you know, work together and learn different skills. You know, that often housing cooperatives require people to take an active part in kind of like organizing and repairing and you know, so people are learning a whole range of skills by being part of a housing cooperative as well. And also it creates that sense of community and shared ownership. And in terms of SDG 4, quality education, you know, co-ops have that commitment to education through Principle 5. You know, so co-ops are actively contributing to quality education and making sure their members are equipped to be able to get the most out of their cooperative as well. So, for example, you know, giving cooperative members support to be able to take active part in governance, but also giving cooperators the skills to develop the products and services which the cooperative is set up to achieve. And then also, you know, thinking about like partnerships for the goals and creating strong institutions. You know, there's a global cooperative movement. So we have a global movement of organizations that work together and are following the same kind of, you know, those values and principles. So we know that you know, there's this really strong global network, and many cooperatives work with other cooperatives to achieve their goals. So we have examples in the UK where we have you know, lots of the independent cooperative societies work together. I mean, the example I gave previously, where, you know, the Co-operative College is actively working with the Central England Cooperative in Malawi, which in turn is working with the Apex organization in Malawi to work with the cooperative organizations, the other cooperatives in Malawi. So we have that kind of, that network, that web of interconnected co-ops working together and really living and breathing the principle 6 there. And also, you know, one of the most important things as well is that cooperatives are often referred to as schools for democracy. So just taking part in that kind of low-level, small-scale democratic practice and enabling people to use their voice, it's a kind of, it's empowering, and it gives people that sense that they can make a difference. Because one of the issues that we have today in society is people feel like they can't change what's happening, and, you know, everything feels a little bit out of control, and people often say, oh, what's the point in voting, because it doesn't change anything. But actually, by taking part in cooperatives, it does give people an active agency in their own organization and in their own life. And so therefore it can start to plant those seeds that actually, you know, taking more of an active role. And, you know, in order to achieve the SDGs, we need to have more of that kind of mindset where we're taking control and we're going to make a difference. So now I'm going to hand back over to Stacey to introduce our activity.
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks for those examples as well. Really, really useful. So what we're going to do next, we're going to do an activity which we can all participate in. Despite us not being able to see each other, we can still connect via a Mentimeter. I just want to say as well that a lot of the images that we've used today, which have the Sustainable Development Goals on, from the United Nations website. And if you go on there, we can certainly post a link in the chat. There's so much information and practical things that you can use in your workplaces, things you can refer to at home. But something that Amanda came across actually was a 2-page document, okay, dead straightforward, with lots of useful examples on that you can do as an individual at home, that you can do at work. It was a guide, and it's called The Lazy Person's Guide to Saving the World. And this particular guide allows people to see, actually, there is a lot I could do. There's a lot I could do from sitting on my couch. There's a lot I could do from making tea, from being in the garden, from being in the community, for being at work. I know that probably before I started working here at the college in a previous workplace, there was nothing about SDGs within my workplace. And it wasn't until I started working here that I become more aware of them. And actually, there's a lot of things I do that contribute to those priorities, but there's a lot more I could also do to contribute to those priorities. So we want you to start thinking about some of those things now. And we're going to use a Mentimeter. So first of all, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pop the link to the Mentimeter in the chat. Okay, so if you just click that link.
Now, I can see that there's lots of really fabulous examples in the chat that people have put in there. So we will be sharing some information after we finish the webinar. So you know, don't worry if you haven't had time to look at the chat yet.
So you'll see the link to the Mentimeter in the chat. You should all be able to access it, and you can either open Mentimeter on your phone if you just type Mentimeter into Google and input the code, or you can just click the link and it'll come up on your computer screen. So it's whatever is easiest for you. I'm just going to pop the code in as well, because it's not that obvious on that link there.
So in terms of this first level of things you can do from your couch, this is really the laziest option. So it's literally, you know, what you can do just by sitting there. So, you know, the types of examples are, you know, you can campaign and network. You can flag when you see abuse online, you can flag it to whichever platform you're on. You can choose to go paperless. You can also, you know, kind of really take part in active campaigning. You can also choose, you know, to turn your lights off, especially in the rooms you're not using, and, you know, switch your devices off as well. So there's many different things. So, you know, it'd be interesting to see what your suggestions are.
What's something you do at home, Amanda, from your couch?
From my couch? Well, I mean, I often don't have the lights on just because I can't be bothered to get up and turn the switch. But at this time of year, you know, I just try not to use too much power. Yeah.
I think I'm very similar. I think something really beneficial that I've been able to do from my couch, literally, is just educating myself and sharing things on social media as well, whatever that might be about. And just by sharing one post on social media, you are actively doing something to raise awareness, which someone else might share, and so on. So if you can see on my screen now, everyone, we've got a lot of input happening on there. We will share everything with you at the end as well, but I'm just going to have a look at a couple of them, and we'll see what other people do. So this one here down on the right, so wearing enough clothes and keeping active to prevent you using the heating. I think that resonates a lot with me and Amanda, because we can sometimes have a catch up online, especially in the winter, and we're working at home, and we will have layers and layers of stuff on just to prevent us putting the heating on. Even if it comes to hats and scarves, it's going on. Using ethical banking, blankets, it's completely with you on the blankets. Let's have a look. Chatting to people about making sustainable choices, absolutely. And also you're connecting with people then, that can also help with mental health. Make sure chargers are turned off when not being used. This is something I was probably guilty of. My daughter goes around the house checking plugs, which is handy because I don't always remember to do that. Share and cook for your friends and family, which again, it's nice, and it's got that social aspect as well. And if we're thinking about some of these as well, we can see that they directly have that link to the Sustainable Development Goals in different ways, and some of them might link to several different ones as well. So that was level 1. Are you ready to move up to level 2, Amanda?
I certainly am.
Right, level 2, everyone. So these are things you can do at home. So this is when you're up off your couch and you're pottering around your house.
So the types of examples that we've got here are things like, you know, taking a short shower instead of either a long shower or a bath, if you can afford it, because obviously some of these choices are, you know, you have to actually spend money in order to be able to achieve these things. So, you know, if you can afford it, perhaps get an electric car or use solar panels, turn your thermostat down. You know, think about your shopping choices. So when you go shopping, you know, think about the sort of the chain involved in your purchasing. Like, are you thinking ethically when you go shopping? And, you know, there's lots of different ways in which we can research products that we use to sort of ascertain, you know, their provenance, where they've come from, who they've been made by, if there's any exploitation, whether that be of people or animals or the environment. You know, we can also reduce, reuse and recycle, and, for example, switch to low energy devices as well. So, you know, low energy light bulbs, but also, you know, think about how we can reduce our energy consumption with other types of appliances as well.
Brilliant.
So I can see there's lots of different
ideas coming up here. Zero waste in practice, low carbon footprint. Oh, do you know what? I love this one. Talking to neighbours about sharing things such as lawnmowers and electric drills, etc. That is something so simple, but yet could be super, super effective, isn't it? I do like that one. I do like them all, but I do like that one. So buying organic food and preparing meals. Yeah, that preparation. Refilling containers, using soap, absolutely. So again, you can see that these things that people do are linked to different SDGs, they overlap with them. So there's so much people are already doing, having smart meters fitted, that can become quite addictive to checking how much you might use when you've just boiled the kettle and things like that. But that's what we want to happen, isn't it? I think it's something small but impactful that I've done as an individual is just changing my routine slightly. So I'm not using my hairdryer or my clothes dryer as much, because I used to use my hairdryer every day. But what I've found by not using it as much is that I save time as well. I just run around faster, so my hair dries quicker. Right, let's move to level 3 then. So these are things that you can do outside your house. So we don't just mean in the garden, but within your community as well, in your local areas.
Yeah. So these are things like, you can get involved in local groups, particularly, thinking about things like, food banks or any types of community organizations that support your local community. Thinking about reusing and recycling again, but this is around having, rather than buying water in plastic bottles, using reusable carrier bags, using reusable bottles, and also fixing and mending. So back in the old days when the problem we have nowadays is because of the the kind of consumer culture that we have, often things aren't actually intended to be fixed. And I think there's certainly some campaigning that needs to happen around, and I do think there is starting to be a change around this. We need to really campaign for things to be fixable, because you used to be able to get things repaired or be able to repair them yourself at home, and this means that there'd be a much longer life for many of the appliances that we use. But again, it's about thinking around, how do we get from A to B? So, rather than using the car for short journeys, and I appreciate that in rural areas, it's often the only choice that people have because the public transport infrastructure just isn't there. However, where you can, take the bus, or, go by foot, or go by bicycle if it's safe and if there's good cycle paths. But also, take part in local democracy. Like, if you want to see change where you live and you want to influence what's happening in your local area, take part in democracy, get involved in groups where you have a voice, and find out how you can, you can be campaigning for those changes locally as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Amanda. I think something that I've done, especially over the last year, is again educating myself, but I've really started to focus a lot on nature and places I can go to learn about nature. And the more you learn about it, the more you want to kind of save it and be kind to it as well. So just looking at some of these responses, I'm loving Garden on the Move, by the way. Carrying seed bombs. Scatter everywhere, joining local community groups. You'd probably be surprised what is around you, but you've just got to take that step to look. But I do love that people are taking that step. Growing own plants from seeds, reusing pots, supporting food banks, using reusable carrier bags, and using public transport as as well, rather than the car. Getting engaged in the circular economy activities, going to repair shops, buying second-hand goods, you know, all those things, you are actively contributing to the priorities of the Sustainable Development Goals. And hopefully,
thing as well, Stacey, about a lot of these activities is they build community as well, because like things like repair shops and, you know, taking things to charity shops, or kind of, you know, making sure that things are going back into that circular economy, and also doing the kind of guerrilla gardening activities, or getting involved in those incredible edible type initiatives, you know, actually you're creating community and strengthening bonds with people, as well as, you know, making changes on a really, really practical level. So it's kind of, you know, there's multiple benefits, isn't there, from these types of activities.
And something else that comes out of that, Amanda, as well, is you've got that link to Sustainable Development Goal 4, so that quality education. If you're doing things within your community, encouraging younger people or people who aren't aware to come in and do that with you. And especially with our younger generation now, if they're starting off from a young age doing it, it can be something which becomes part of, you know, their daily activities that they can then pass down from generation to generation. But it's about getting that buy-in from people as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
We do have a local school. It's a high school, and I see them quite often, not far from my house, and they all have the high vis jackets on, and they all go litter picking, you know, and it's just a nice thing to do. And secondly, you're getting out in the fresh air, moving away from screens and taking in the fresh air, and spending time actually talking to people without a screen being involved as well. Anyway, let's go to level 4. The level 4 are things that you can do at work. So think about if you work at home, if you actually work in a building, what are those things that you do?
So like examples here will be things like, you know, encouraging your employer to switch to low energy, you know, low energy, but also, you know, switch the power source to renewables, if that's possible. You know, go paper free, reduce the amount of resources that are used, but also within the workplace, campaigning for equality. So like looking at pay gaps between different groups of people, and kind of, you know, and the pay grading, and working out, you know, is this fair and is this equitable for everybody that's working in that organization? And again, you know, thinking about how do you get to work if you do travel to work. I mean, I travel from my kitchen into my front room, so I don't have to take public transport, but you know, if you do travel to work, you know, get on a bus or get on a tram if that's available. And then thinking about, you know, reducing waste as well, and that kind of waste management, because I think sometimes it's almost it's almost like you create more waste at work in some ways. I don't know, because I used to find that when I worked in an office, I had a kind of different attitude towards like wasting paper at work than I did about wasting paper at home, and I really had to kind of give myself a talking to about that as well. So, you know, it's really kind of consciously thinking about your behaviors, because it's often, you know, these are often very sort of behavioral type things, aren't they?
And also, if you do travel to a workplace and you know you pop in the co-op for your sandwich and a drink and a bag of crisps, you've got your packaging there as well, haven't you? Whereas if you brought your own, or so at work, you've got that extra packaging that you might use that you might not use at home.
But also I think about around that is like your workplace recycling schemes, because what I used to find as well was that often in your office, you're like the recycling isn't as efficient as perhaps it is in a domestic setting. So, you know, you end up where you're not actually recycling as much of that kind of rubbish that you do as if you're at home. So, you know, taking in a packed lunch is definitely going to help with that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you've got your more like other things as well, like if you see discrimination in the workplace, raising your voice to the right people, so people are aware that is happening, and it, you know, that can be stopped as well. Just looking at some of the examples on the screen, and Amanda, talking staff members about sustainable ideas and goals. You know, you could have like a little group where like champions or ambassadors within the workplace, couldn't you? You know, there's a lot of you working in the same place. Bring and share lunches. You could take it in turns. I like that idea. Taking it in turns to bring the lunch in a box that you can wash afterwards. Having study groups to learn together. That's something that we do at the college. And like quite recently, a few of us was doing a social justice course, again, which is educating ourselves about social justice and inequalities. But then you've also got that element of learning together as well, and studying about that together and sharing your experiences. Trying not to print documents, absolutely. Encouraging the use of public transport. I think a lot of organisations offer different incentives now, don't they? Like for riding your bike to work, or perhaps helping towards the cost of public transport, maybe. Being a role model to colleagues. Yeah, being that person who sets those standards and, you know, shows people actually you don't have to feel powerless in actioning or being an activist in meeting those priorities of the SDGs. Here are some quite simple things you can do and getting everyone to do that. So we're going to go to the last question. Are you ready, Amanda?
I'm ready.
So the last question is, we want everybody to think of an action that you can do. So this is something you don't already do. So something new that you can do, and it's not intentionally rhyming that, that you could start pretty much today or tomorrow. But it's got to be realistic. You've got to be able to say, yeah, I can commit to that. So any ideas you've got, pop them on. Let's have a look. And perhaps, you know, you might see an action on my screen and think, oh, I could do that one as well. And I could do that one. You know, it's like a goodie bag, isn't it? Or pick a mix.
Yeah, it's very much about looking at some of the other suggestions that people have put in today.
Yeah.
And thinking, oh, yeah, that's a brilliant idea. I'm going to try that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything, do you think you could do, Amanda, that you can come up today?
Yes, well, I'm just about to move house, and I am going to I'm going to make sure that I really make sure that the next house that I move into has got, you know, the maximum amount of sort of insulation and all of those kind of measures, those simple measures that I can take to make sure that that house is as kind of, you know, insulated as it can be, to sort of help with, I mean, it's obviously it's a cost incentive as well with the prices of fuel at the moment, but also, you know, that I think even though it might sound slightly insensitive to say it, one thing about the fuel crisis is that it has kind of forced people to really kind of cut down on the amount of fuel that they're using, which in turn does have an environmental benefit, because in order for us to kind of make these behavioral changes, we do all have to kind of rethink about how much energy we consume and how, you know, those lifestyle choices. And sometimes I think, you know, we are all a bit guilty of just whacking the heating up, you know, as a sort of comfort blanket, when actually we could just pop an extra jumper on and, you know, have a little blankie over our knees when we're watching telly in the evenings, you know. So I think that, you know, we can all try something. How about you, Stacey? What do you think you're going to try?
You know what I really want to do, seeing what people have added, is talk to my children, because they are aware of little things, but I don't think I make enough of a big deal of it in front of them for them to think more about it. So I think for me is just having that chat with the kids, maybe over tea or something. And I think something else that I would like to do is probably maybe have the idea of maybe speaking to a neighbour, because I've got quite good neighbours, and we do get on very well. So perhaps sharing the responsibility for making tea one night, just them little things again, and checking all my plugs are unplugged. I need to be more responsible about that instead of leaving it up to my daughter, which I do unintentionally. Let's have a look what other people have put on though. Joining a local community group in the area. Okay, fab. New ideas to improve my job and manage my area. Yeah, so making that more sustainable, I suppose, and effective for everyone.
I like the one around walking to the local shop rather than driving, even when it's raining. Because that's the thing, you see. Sometimes there are those days when you just, you know, you look outside and it's, you know, it's coming down in sheets of rain and you just think, oh, I'll just pop in the car. So, you know, it's good to sort of recognize, isn't it? We need to make those little changes.
100%. Take part in litter picking. I feel like that's something I could get involved in as well. And quite often, especially like on a weekend when some of the football matches have been on the fields down the road, the field is literally full of plastic bottles and they can be there for several days as well. But I'm thinking, I wonder if people around the local area would help to move that. Although it should be the football teams, it doesn't always happen, but just because they don't do it doesn't mean it isn't my responsibility either, does it? Because the SDGs are everyone's responsibility. Changing the bank to a green bank. Okay, and I think I saw one about changing energy providers as well. So finding those more ethical companies to be a part of. What else have we got? Look more to meet the goal on good health and well-being. That's really important. If you've got that, if you know, if your well-being is good, etc., that can have a knock-on effect on all the other SDGs as well. Walking more, put a bit more gentle pressure on my stepson about his overuse of environmentally unfriendly disposable items. I'm going to take that as well. I think that's something I could do too. Think before disposing of anything. So clothes, electrical appliances, etc. Aim is to ensure that we maximise life of products and lower carbon footprint. Definitely ethical broadband. Do an audit of my new house to see where I can make changes to make it more energy efficient. So these are all practical things that most people could do as well. So that's great, fantastic. Thank you everyone as well for contributing to that Mentimeter. What we will do with those results is collate them all, and I think Kaylee, our marketing manager, is going to be sending out goodie bags as well. What a treat. And it will have all these great ideas and actions in there too. That's the end of the activity, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's some great suggestions in chat as well, you know, thinking about you know, making suggestions for, you know, making sure we plant trees. And also, you know, sort of campaigning for a ferry for pedestrians and small electric vehicles across the local estuary rather than driving around by car. That's a fantastic, that's quite exciting.
It was a very exciting one, that.
And we've put in the chat as well, you know, joining the co-op party is a good suggestion. So lots of, and someone else also suggested about emptying their fridge and turning it off when they're away, because I think that's definitely something that I would imagine that most of us do when we go away. We just leave our fridges on.
Yeah, that's something I did do when I went on holiday recently. And when I got back from holiday, I think the electric had cut out or something, and my freezer defrosted and there was food in the freezer, and I was gutted because all that food then went to waste, which is what we do not want.
Yeah.
It is things like that. I absolutely agree. We've also got some really useful links in the chat as well. So Ramina has shared a link to Bank Green. So that's for ethical banking. Sarah has shared a link from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is about the circular economy. So if anyone wants to go and have a look at that. Any links which have been shared, I think we can send those out as well when Hayley makes those communications, just in case you lose the links. But yeah, appreciate everyone for contributing to that. It's not always easy sharing what you actually do and what you need to learn. So it's quite a brave thing to participate in that. So thank you.
So that's kind of brought us to the end of our webinar. It's been really lovely to spend this time with everybody and with my lovely colleague Stacey, and think about, you know, what more we can do for the SDGs. But like I said earlier, you know, if you are interested in the cooperative angle on the SDGs, which is obviously, you know, kind of central to our work at the Co-operative College, you know, we do have quite an extensive course on cooperatives and the SDGs that you can access via our online learning platform, and there's lots of information on our website around that, and there's a taster session that's available that's completely free as well. But also the ILO, so the International Labour Organization, has produced quite a good range of resources around the cooperatives and SDGs. And a few years ago, they produced a fact sheet for every single one of the SDGs, which included like why it was so important to be addressing the SDG, what cooperatives were doing against that SDG in general terms, and then it gave some really sort of like clear case study examples of what co-ops were doing in the field for that particular SDG. So what we'll do at the end of the webinar as well is we'll share those resources as well as some of the UN resources which are have already been shared, because the UN website on the Sustainable Development Goals has got lots and lots of different resources and, you know, other kind of interactive pages and other ideas around also educating people on the SDGs as well. So that's a really good place to go and have like a little route around if you're interested in finding out more.
I just wanted to echo something I've just seen in the chat from David Wren, and he shared a link about donut economics. If you get an opportunity to ever have a look at that, do there's a fantastic book about it as well, and some videos. I think it might be a webinar, but if you get the opportunity to have a look at donut economics, it really is amazing to read about. So I recommend that as well. And that's everything. We're all
Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for coming.
We look forward to doing another webinar at some point. You know, Stacey and I would love to do another webinar. So if anyone has any suggestions for any kind of webinars that they'd like to see from the Co-operative College, then do please get in touch with us as well. That would be really fantastic.
Really, thank you everyone.
Thanks everyone, and thanks Stacey.
Thank you, Amanda.